Welcome to another episode of SJS Recommends. I'm SJS and I'm here with my co-host Altaz. So how are you today, Altaz?
Yeah, good, good. I'm excited to talk about your picks this week.
So yeah, before we get into the picks, you viewers can see that my background has changed a bit. So I did some reorganizing on this room, and also the shelves themselves are reorganized. So the films are now on this side and the books are on that side. So it's a bit different. And then I have this smaller shelf in between them with a statue of Venus. Yeah, so that's nice new background. It still needs some work, but we'll see how it turns out in the end.
I think it looks great. Yeah, I really like that. The two devils on your shoulder,
Yeah,
the movies on one, the books on the other. And
yeah,
such nice artwork in the middle. So it's a nice representation of what you're about.
yeah. There's this French painting here as well. So yeah,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
but anyway, today we are gonna talk about András Ruakin's The Return and Misoguchi's The Life of Oharu, as well as Schubert, played by András Schiff. But we are going to start first with The Return, then we are going to talk about The Life of Oharu, then we are going to choose the films for the next podcast. Then after that, it's time for the music. And then after we talked about Schubert, I will announce the classical music pick for the next episode as well. But yeah, anyway, let's start with this really interesting Russian film from 2003. I think this will be very interesting to talk about, as it is quite ambiguous in many ways. So it's kind of leaves it up to interpretation in many ways. But as always, I'll ask Altaz first some quick general comments about it before we get into the themes and stuff.
Yes, I absolutely loved this one. I really enjoyed it, and for some of the reasons you're saying, as there's going to be lots to kind of speculate about and think about in this. So I'm very much looking forward to uh, discussing this one. And I remember when you introduced it, you said something like, "Oh, it's a thriller," and then you kind of corrected yourself. But I was like, "Yes, I understand why you call it a thriller uh, as well."
Yeah, but I think one kind of basic thing to say about it now first would be that you can see the Tarkovsky influence very
Yeah.
much
Oh,
in the
yeah.
film. Yeah, how it's shot, it's this like very methodical cinematography with these big wide shots, and yeah, it is very kind of meditative and kind of poetic feeling the film has. Like it starts with this great scene with this and this tower where the kids are and they want to jump to the water, and it's a kind of that scene like really pulls you in immediately. And then obviously the tower has a big significance in the film as the kind of big twist in the film, like 20 minutes before it ends, is in a tower in this
Mhm.
kind of place where the father takes the kids. So when you think about the name of the film, The Return, obviously it's about the return of the father, but you could also say it's about the return of the tower because there are these two towers in the film. Yeah, it starts with
Absolutely.
that and then it returns in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony will like this, as that's Chekhov's gun. So I really enjoyed that part where it's like if it's in the first act, you know it's going to be in the final act and it's going to be significant. And so the towers, pillaring the film, but they're mirrors. What's happening with respect to the tower is kind of a mirror, because we're going to go into opposite worlds. But yes, exactly like you said, that first scene, it just pulls you in. And you know going through life as having experienced boyhood, I have, and that scene is so elemental, the way it's shot, and with the crane going above and taking to show you the fear, what it looks like from the perspective of Ivan, or Vanya, as they call him, as his nickname. and that the water and the colors and the space and the sparseness, it's like yanks you right in. What an opening shot, what an opening scene.
Yeah, this actually now like brought back this memory from my childhood when you said that we have gone through boyhood as well. It was, we were swimming in the summer in my hometown in this river, and there was this tower type of thing where you can jump, but this was a place where you shouldn't jump. So one of my friends wanted to show us how brave he is, and he jumped, and then he broke his back. But fortunately, he survived, and he didn't have any permanent damage, but he hurt himself really bad just because he wanted to show how brave he is. But it just reminded me of that suddenly. But so I kind of have experience of this type of stuff, and I was also kind of like that as a kid, that I wanted to show the people that I can do stuff. So I wasn't the kid who was like scared, but I wanted to also be brave. But obviously, I think we all can also relate to the young boy who was scared to jump as one of the main characters, as we probably all have experiences like that we don't want to do something, but you feel pressured to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you raise two very important points already, which is, one is the aspect where you need to establish you're not afraid, and you're brave, and doesn't matter how reckless of the thing, doesn't matter what risk. It's like any risk, it tells us a lot about how we operate in our psychology. That risk is less scary than the ostracization from your peers. Yet Ivan, in a sense, has, maybe we could say that we're already being shown that he is different. His perspective is different, where he is able to see the risk to himself and whether this is a wise thing to do. And the other thing is, you're talking about being the boy who was kind of, less afraid or willing to go and do that. I was the opposite. I was very afraid. I was raised to be very afraid of all kinds of things. And for me, it wasn't even one of these kind of wild scenarios. It was during like learning swimming. So it was like for swimming lessons. And then we got to a stage where we had to do go off the kind of diving platforms. And so when I saw that scene, it brought back memories when I was standing on the edge and then looking at the pool downstairs, and people, I think I was like one of the last ones. So people are already there in the pool, and they're looking up at you, and you're looking down, and you can see the height. And then you're like, in your head, you're like, oh, I'm going to have to jump, and I can't back down. So for me, it was different because I still did take the leap. And then once you land, you realize, okay, it's not a big deal. But it's captured so well, that feeling you get right before, because that you're just not sure it's safe, you're not sure you're going to be okay. And like, what a scene. Of course, he decides not to. And we forgot to mention, anyone watching this, there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't watched it yet, watch it and then come back, and I'm sure you can contribute to the discussion and comments as well. But yes, so he doesn't jump, and something else happens. And then maybe you can talk about the significance of what happens as a result of him not jumping, which...
Yeah, obviously his mother comes there, and then obviously the other boys leave him there, and then the mother comes to save him. But I was actually just thinking when you were saying that, kind of a parallel to the ending with the tower, or not quite the ending of the film, but when the father falls off the tower, because before that the boy is thinking, I'm gonna jump now I'm gonna be brave enough to jump, but then the father ends up falling from the tower. So this kind of shows that maybe this boy is actually better than the other guys, that he knows the risk of jumping, but when the other, it shows that these other guys who are maybe more toxic than him fall from the tower. So maybe there's some kind of a theme there that sometimes it's good not to be brave and be more maybe rational in a way, because these other guys who are maybe more masculine, they fall off the tower and their life ends badly or something like that. I was just thinking of that analysis over the top off the top of my head. So yeah.
I think that's a very good analysis, and like you said, that's the ambiguity, and that's what makes this film like absolutely terrific, because it is ambiguous. It's like this kid, he's Hamlet-esque, right? He's like has all these doubts about his father, even suspicions about, can I trust all these people who are telling me to jump? Do they have my best interest at heart, or some of these societal values and norms that I have to follow? Do I have to be brave and all that? Why do I have to follow them? So clearly he's someone who is also Kaji-like, from our favorite, one of our favorite films, The Human Condition, where he is challenging these norms. He's suspicious of these norms, and then at the end, well, yeah, I mean, I think we can discuss that perhaps even in a little while, because that ending is very, very profound. What does it really mean, when he's going to jump off, given the circumstance is totally different in a way, and he may or may not be in harm's way, whether that's in his head. So that's why I said Hamlet-esque, because you're like, is he overly paranoid, or is he rightly suspicious of all these things? So that'll be very interesting. But you had mentioned that we would talk a little bit about some of the aesthetics first, just to change it up, because we love talking about the themes and the kind of the deeper analysis. But I think you said you wanted to start with talking about some of the aesthetics of the film.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, it's very Tarkovsky-esque. So there are so many like beautiful shots in here. And there's like, when the camera moves, it's always like very steady, like also very slow. And of course the whole film, it has like a very, or not very, but fairly slow pace. And the cinematography really adds to that. It creates this world. And this world is actually very interesting in the film, that we don't see that many people anywhere they go. They're almost always like just the three of us. When they go through these roads, there aren't many cars there. Or when they are in the city, they go to the restaurant, there are barely any people in the streets. And so this world feels like very desolate and empty, but I think that's what makes it beautiful with these shots, that we focus on the nature and the buildings, and we have a strong focus on these three main characters, but then we kind of exit the other world and leave that behind, and we just have this very strict focus on these things.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's the feeling of that space that exists, this desolation, this remoteness, and then on top of that, they're in this journey that in some ways can be romanticized, right? The sons reuniting with their father, and they're going on this road trip, and they're going on this bonding journey, but there's this constant eerie feeling that you could see in Tarkovsky. So I haven't seen as much Tarkovsky as you. I've only seen 2 films so far. But yeah, like even in Solaris, that kind of that spaciness, that eeriness, remoteness, seclusion, and what just really captivated me is the color scheme, because the film starts, and most of the film starts, and there's a blue-green, so it's almost like patina. So it's like this, it's almost like making you feel like it's like this aged antique element, like this father-son relationship, this almost like age-old relationship. Or we can look at these norms that we've been following in society for men all these years. It could symbolize a lot of things, but I could see that patina, that green blue, and that is just a magnificent color scheme and goes so well with that desolation. It's like you're in this world, but you're not kind of really in this world. So it's real and not real at the same time. And then as the film progresses, I noticed that the scheme becomes more and more blue and less green. And it made me curious. I wonder what that might represent, why that scheme goes more towards blue. What does that blue represent versus the kind of blue-green that was the kind of the original scheme for so long. So that was also really nice.
Yeah, it's actually like this painting has a bit of a similar color, funnily enough. Yeah. But yeah, I think the film definitely, I mean, it gets kind of also a bit brighter towards the end, even though the film gets quite dark. Although, I mean, the beginning is very dark as well, but it definitely gets brighter. And also the beach scenes and stuff, they look absolutely gorgeous. And when they're in the boat and all those shots. And it doesn't look like a place necessarily when they are in the beach and in the forest, that it doesn't look like a place where something bad is going to happen. But then we see how toxic the father is. He like hits one of the older brother, and the brothers feel like that maybe he's going to kill them or something. And that's obviously when the younger brother runs to the tower and climbs there. And
what I really appreciate with a film like this is the visionary, the filmmaker, the director, the screenplay writers, everyone who's involved in something so magnificent, is that it brings back your memory of childhood, because I forgot what those experiences feel like. And then this film reminded me what those experiences felt like for me when I was young. Like, I could relate 100% to the boys and their father, because your father is a mystery, right? Like, at least for me, it's like when I was experiencing life and growing in boyhood and stuff, my father was this kind of mysterious character. Like, sometimes he could seem very harsh. Maybe he's trying to teach me something about the world that I don't necessarily agree with or believe at that point, or I don't see it as my limited perspective as a child. I don't quite know what he's been through, where he's coming from. So there's that whole mystery. So this father is this mystery object, right? In some ways, maybe he's trying to help them and teach them certain skills and certain realities about the world. But then at the same time, there are these tendencies where he can get aggressive. And in this case, he actually hits, which is not something I experienced myself. But that aggressiveness and anger, that frustration with you, and you as a child trying to figure out, especially with the older boys. So it's like the Andre and Ivan, it's like almost like your experience is a mixture of both, because sometimes you are Andre, you want to please, you want to understand what you did wrong exactly, why this love is being presented and removed at times, the praise is presented and then removed sometimes. So what to create that whole psyche, but through the cinematic lens, is just, it's so incredible. Like, it was so incredible.
The whole film is kind of, again, generally about masculinity. It's about the father's masculinity and his way of things, but also of these two young boys becoming men in this harsh reality. And it's just when you were describing that, it brings so many memories from my own life as well. Actually, I didn't think of this as much when I was watching the film, but now when we are talking about like I've been in those types of journeys with like my stepfather and his son as well. I mean, I've told you this, for example, when he kidnapped us. I mean, I'm not gonna talk about this, but it was kind of like the father figure and then two kids in a car going somewhere, and you don't know what's gonna happen. So I can really actually relate to this film now that I think about it. But the father is a very interesting character. Like, we can see that he at least cares a little bit about these two boys. Like, for example, when he climbs to the tower to get the younger brother, it seems like he's actually really worried about him and cares for him. But then when you contrast to the thing what happened just before that, when he was like very aggressive on the beach, so it is kind of like a total mystery character, that what should we actually think about him. And it's obviously partly a mystery also where he had been, like that when the kids had been with their single mother, and so where the father had been for years. I guess he probably was in prison, as we know that he is kind of some kind of a criminal, and there's this kind of small kind of criminal job he does in the film as well at one point in the middle of the film, although it's all kind of really vague what it is about. And of course there's this one interesting scene also when there's the young men like stealing the money from the two brothers, and then the father goes to get one of the thieves, and then there's this kind of masculinity ritual with the father and the two boys, and he says to the boys that if you want to take a punch, you can go ahead. Yeah, be a man. Yeah.
My God. I mean, you describing it right now makes me want to watch the film all over again, because I mean, what you're saying too, how it relates, because he does kidnap the boys, because they're technically supposed to only be with him for a period of time, and then he tells them, you just stay with me. And the kids decide to go with him rather than return back home, which everything about this has this whole metaphorical, proverbial aspect, right? The tension of the child between the mother and the father, right? Which world do I really belong to? So it's like they've been in this mother's world, which is in a way, that is what is for a child, right? There's, to a certain point, it's like your focal point is just the mother. Here it's more literal. There, the father is just not around. But then the father comes back, the proverbial father comes back, and then he like takes them away. Now it's up to me to teach you about the world, because you're going to be part of my world. But they are like on this borderline, wondering, why do I have to be part of this world, and trying to figure out which way to go. And then they're supposed to go back at that point. They're like, okay, you're lying to me. You're basically telling me it's supposed to be this, but it's going to be none of that. Like, I just want to go back. And then he's like, keep coming with me. And in a way, he's kidnapping them. He's like trying to steal them away from the mother, which has a whole emotional aspect, because that is what fathers do, don't they? Like, I mean, they're like, it's my son, like I have to guide him. Like, you don't understand him because you're the mother. You grew up as a woman in this world. You don't know what he needs, and all this. And that dialogue is still there constantly, where you hear, oh, the son needs a father. The son needs a father. The kids need a father. So it's so interesting, because it works on so many layers. They're like a biblical layer, a metaphorical layer, a sociological layer, an emotional layer.
And it's interesting how these two brothers, they see the father quite differently. So the older brother is maybe a bit more understanding of the father, and then the younger brother is kind of more skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also another layer to that is that obviously the younger brother seems to be quite, like you could say, cowardly in the beginning, or maybe he's more rational, like I said earlier, when he doesn't jump from the tower, but he actually has more guts to kind of fight against his father in a way. And so that there he kind of shows more bravery than the older brother, but then the older brother showed more bravery in the beginning in the tower. So there's lots of comparisons and contrasts that we can do there between the brothers as well. But then in the end, when the father is dead, then the older brother kind of seems, quote unquote, more brave again. So it's kind of weird. Or I guess this is kind of the journey with masculinity, that it's not always up like this, but you go like this in your journey in life, and when you grow to be a man and things like that. So maybe there's a bit of that too.
Yeah, it's the complexity. It's all woven in there. There's no, and that makes you think about how brilliant this film is, because at no point is it trying to pull you one way or another. It's just constantly complex. It's constant in every scene. In every scene, you're kind of like, okay, I see the father's reacting this way. That's not great. But sometimes you could see where the child is being petulant a little bit. So you see this complexity, and then, like you said, it's like a thriller mystery, because the whole time you're thinking, who's this father? Like, who is he? Is he good? Is he bad? Does he love his kids? Does he not? Does he have kind of callous disregard? Is he using them as a way, as a ploy? Who is he? Is he going to abandon them again? Is he there to stay with them? There's this constant, it's running in your background, this anxiety. And I'm like, that's the brilliance of this film. It's like you're feeling the anxiety of the child. That mystery that they're trying to figure out who their father is and what he represents and what he's trying to do for them. Because how many times growing up, I always thought, like, my father's trying to harm me somehow. Right? Or he's not being sensitive to my needs, or he doesn't understand, or where is he exactly, or he doesn't get it. And so it's like I would of course see it from the child's perspective, but then I started to empathize a little bit with the father too, being a bit older and stuff in my life. So I started thinking, well, that might not be the whole picture. He has cruel sides, but that doesn't mean he's a fully cruel person. So it's like this, he's lacking in some things, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily all in all bad or has ulterior motives. So and it leaves you with that mystery, right? You never really quite solve it.
Yeah, and we don't know what his own childhood was like, so he probably had a very toxic father as well. And then we have this kind of cycle of like generation after generation after generation of toxicity that I think probably both of us can relate to in our own lives as well. But the kind of ambiguity of this whole film, it's kind of, there are many things about the film that I feel like I'm in awe when I see the visuals and stuff, but I feel like I'm missing so many of the themes. Like, for example, after the father died and then the kids track the body and stuff, it feels like there's so much there, so much symbolism and themes there, but I feel like I don't get all the references. I can kind of see that there is something there, but I'm not quite sure what it is about it. There are probably some like brick references to, like you said, maybe even the Bible or other literature. Because I think even Tony, we talked about this film a little bit on Wednesday when we had this random video chat for a few hours, and I think he talked about Schiff, how he loves Chekhov, for example, and obviously Tarkovsky and things. So there's probably, you can see the Chekhov influence here too, but I've only read one short story from him. I know you read some of the plays recently. I haven't read them yet, but I'm not sure how many kind of Chekhov references there are in this film, for example. Obviously, you mentioned the Chekhov thing with the towers, like the first act and the end, but yeah, I don't know how much more there is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel the same way. I feel like there's so many significant things, because we talk about the tower and we think, okay, that's the two pillars, but actually you're right that at the end, what happens after is super significant. What they're doing with the body, why they're choosing to do certain things with the body, their reaction to what ultimately happens to the body. Though there's heavy symbolism there. And like you said, it's one of those that, of course, you got to watch it again. And then it's almost like you got to become more astute in his influences to really understand what that's all about. But the two towers, the one thing I could see is they're like mirrors, but they're opposites, right? Because in the first scene, it's the mother that comes to the rescue. And in the second situation, it's the tower. And then the father is, well, we think coming to harm him. And then the question is, was he coming? And then that perception changes. And then you start thinking, no, he's concerned about the safety. So that creates the whole mystery that with the mother, it's very clear she's there to bring him to safety. but there's a doubt about why the father is going up there. It seems like the father is about to go and harm him. And that's maybe the first glimpse you start getting that these sons mean a lot more to him than he's revealing. And on top of that, there's no water, right? In the first tower, it's with water, and he's going to knock jump. And here, there's no water, like you said. So it's an act of greater bravery because, or is he trying to just commit suicide? That's the ambiguity, right? Is it like great bravery that I'm going to take this jump to get away from you, or his greatest bravery is in an act of like suicide and self-sacrifice? I don't know, but that's what makes this movie absolutely like magnificent, and one that you can see watching over and over and over through many periods of your life, rethinking it, and as you learn more, rethinking the themes and what you're seeing.
And I think in the last 20 minutes, you can really see how brilliant the performances of these two kids are. You see this like huge range of emotions. Although lots of it is a bit ambiguous also, like what these kids truly feel. In the end, of course, we can see both shock, kind of coldness, but also sadness. For example, when they're in the boat and then the father goes to the water, like sinks into the water, and then they're like, oh, father, like I don't want that to happen to you. So you can see that they're really sad about it too, even though at sometimes it feels like they are really cold about it. And it's also like, do we think in the end that now these boys are men because they've gone through this masculinity ritual, or are they still boys, or are they men now? And yeah, there's so many things.
Yeah, it's like, and you said even in the water, right? It's like, is that some kind of symbolism for baptism? Something with the water, cleaning. And it's interesting that you also picked this movie with water themes because, of course, Mizoguchi is also famous for loving water, especially in Sancho the Bailiff, water playing a very significant symbolic place. So the water is a symbolic, most definitely, right? It's like it's there in the beginning, it's there. The father sinks in the water. What is the significance of the water? That's one thing to definitely ponder about in this film. And then it's like the end, the very end, when the pictures start, that just shattered me. Just seeing those pictures, it's like, I don't know, it's like so heartbreaking when it's like those family pictures, and then the father is there, but it's not him, right? With the father we saw now is like grizzly, he's got a beard and he's hardened, but in those pictures he's like soft and he's younger. You know what I mean? Like he's clean shaven. Like it's like, and it's just shattering. It's like it becomes even more profound on how they choose to do the titles, roll the titles at the end with the home pictures. It reminds me of even Paris, Texas, with watching the home videos and stuff, or no, the slideshow of the pictures, and just like Harry Dean Stanton, like looking at those pictures. It's like just shattering moment at the end. It's like it wants to impress itself on your brain too. It's not trying to make the story end. It wants to leave it on your brain.
Yeah, that was really interesting what you said about the baptism, maybe like when he sinks into the water, that he's kind of purified after he dies, when he cares for his kid and tries to save him, but so then in the end, when he in death, he's kind of purified and maybe lost all of that toxicity in a way. But then in the beginning, when the kids jump to the water, that doesn't feel very purifying.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the boys just leave the younger brother there, and they are all toxic and stupid and annoying and selfish. So it kind of feels like the water, like just like the towers, they symbolize very different things in the beginning and in the end.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like it's really interesting because it's like these two pillars. It's like, you're right, the tower and water. You have it in the beginning, you have it at the end. You're right, they're young, they're jumping in the water. What does that mean? And he's not jumping in the water. And then at the end, okay, the father sinks in the water. And what does that mean? And taking him on the boat. Like some of it was almost mythological, like it reminded me of like Greek myth and story when they're taking the father. Like it takes that level of myth and fairy tale. Like it reminded me a lot of like Joseph Campbell's work, because I was like, the symbolism's so strong here, like to take the dead body and you're taking him in a boat and you're going this journey on this water. Like, what is that? It's like classic Western literature. Like the symbolism is so strong. I can't decipher exactly what it means, but my God, does it resonate? And you're right about the whole rite of passage. Was this just a rite of passage of now entering into like from boyhood to manhood, or was like in you have in these very dark European fairy tales and stuff like that. It's just a great film, really great film.
Yeah, but I wonder how maybe like Schiff did many of these things that we think are symbolism, but maybe he just did them from like an aesthetic reason, that it looks really beautiful. And obviously, for example, Tarkovsky, one of his main influences, always said that don't analyze my films, just feel them. So I don't know how that kind of would also relate to this film, that maybe these things don't actually mean that much, but we are just kind of overthinking them. But also, I think Schiff, maybe he doesn't have like a huge meaning for this, but maybe he just wants each viewer to have their own meaning with the film, because this is definitely one of those films where you can just have million different interpretations. I think with some other films, obviously the themes are very clear, like the Life of Oharu that we are going to talk about. It's kind of pretty clear, the things that what it is about, but with the Return, it's completely opposite, that you can take a look at it from many different angles. So
I feel like it's a bit cheeky of Tarkovsky to say don't analyze my films when his films are so rich with symbolism, and then say, yeah, but don't analyze it. I think that's a bit cheeky to say, but I also agree with what he's saying, because when we talk about the symbolism, that's fun to discuss, but to everyone who's like listening and who watch this film is not one that you need to go and study the symbolism. You're absolutely right there, SGS, that it's an experience. It's like a 2001 Space Odyssey, like that. It's an experience. You can go through the whole experience, and you don't have to think about the symbols. You don't have to think about what it means. But the film itself is so profound that it can't help you make you feel that way. That every moment you go through this journey, and then you come out, and then you're just trying to reflect. It's same like Paris, Texas, and all these films. They're just whole experiences. You can go in. They're very meditative, like you said. They're like, and then they're like kind of archetypes that are there. You can think about them. You can't conclude what they mean. I don't think you can conclude exactly on everything Tarkovsky was doing or saying. And so, yeah, it is in some ways beyond analysis and doesn't need to be analyzed. It stands on its own.
Yeah, it's one of those films, like you said, like 2001, where you just lose yourself, and like the pacing is absolutely perfect, and you just feel like you've been hypnotized when you watch it. And like I said also earlier, that the first scene that really just pulls you in, and then you are in for the ride immediately. I remember when I watched this for the first time a few years ago, and I was just completely blown away, and I didn't see the thing coming that the father is gonna fall off the tower. So I was like in complete shock the first time I watched it, but it's still, now that I watched it for the second time, it still really works as well, even though I knew what was gonna happen. And this was also a film that, even though I hadn't seen it in a few years, I remembered it really well, because this is something that you keep thinking about for months and years to come, because it was just one of those films that it's kind of unforgettable experience.
Yeah, and each of the different events that happen as well, because we're just talking about in general, but yeah, that events of that road trip and stuff are they're so eventful and so interesting, but at the same time there are these moments, they're in the car and they're just having these interactions, and yeah, you're right, you just pulled into the atmosphere and the pacing and the silences, and then on top of that, it reminded me a lot of Hamaguchi films as well, because it's like it starts with mostly, I guess you call it diagenic sounds. So it's mostly just the natural sounds that are in the environment of what you are seeing, but there's this very minimalist sound here and there, soundscape in there, but then it grows into a score, and then the music is absolutely beautiful as well. This kind of spacey, electronic, almost with a feeling of alienation and anxiety in the score. So it's like that part too. So the cinematography, the color, the atmosphere, it's such a it's like mastercraft there. Like this is what we love the movies for.
And there are these like very small scenes that you wouldn't think are very suspenseful and interesting, but they are. Like, for example, when the car is stuck in the forest.
Oh yes,
in
yes,
the dark,
yes.
and they have to again use the axe to get the 3 sticks and put them under the tires, and then like push the car. And even that scene is so suspenseful and interesting. And obviously the dinner scene when the younger brother doesn't want to eat, and then like the father is just all toxic. I give you 2 minutes, and yeah, it's just all these small moments are so brilliant as well. And also I mentioned earlier that the performances by the 2 kids are amazing, but this father is like what a stunning performance as well. Like he just does that ambiguity and that kind of like anger and toxicity under the surface so well, and incredible performance. Yeah.
Incredible. And like you said, to have young actors perform at that level, I mean, the amazing performance by the 2 like teen and child actors. I mean, it's like that level of expression on Ivan, also played by an actor I think whose name is Ivan. So like just that level of expression and disdain and all that stuff that he would feel for his father, and the way he was expressing it, and you could really, he could express his emotions and the complexity of his emotions so well, and his reactions and his fear and his doubt, and what a performance.
Oh, I just actually realized one interesting connection. Ivan's Childhood by Tarkovsky,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is also about like a young guy or young kid and losing his innocence and stuff. And so I think maybe that's a small reference to that. And one interesting thing about this film is also that this was actually Suakintsev's first feature film, his debut feature, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? Wow.
Yeah. How can your first film be this good? Like the aesthetics and everything is just utter perfection. And even though we talked about the Tarkovsky influence, it's not like that he steals Tarkovsky's style or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but it's just influenced by it. But it's also very different in many ways, but it's just one of the most beautiful looking films I've ever seen. And by the way, I also was going to mention about the color palette earlier, that I think the couple other films I've seen by him, the next 2 that he did after this, so The Banishment and then Elena, they have fairly similar type of color palette. So it seems to be maybe a bit of a signature style of him, that he uses this kind of grays and light blue and things like that, even though The Banishment and Elena are quite different films, although The Banishment is fairly similar, and I think the main character in that is actually the father from The Return, if I remember correctly. And he gives another great performance in that. But yeah.
You've now put me down a rabbit hole. First of all, mentioning how this is his first film is just amazing. It is true. It's absolutely amazing that that's his first film. I totally forgot about Ivan's Childhood, which I have seen. I was just thinking of, Andrew Rublev and Solaris, and of course I've seen Ivan's Childhood as well. So Ivan, and then and again, yes, it's Lost in this wilderness, and of course it's about toxicity, the toxicity of war, and there are all these norms of men and codes that's all in there as well. And then of course you have these crazy landscapes in Ivan's Childhood, this wilderness, this alienation is there definitely. Wow. And was Ivan's Childhood Tarkovsky's first film?
Yeah, first feature film. He had made a couple of shorts before that, but yeah.
Wow. Right? So I mean, we're geeking out here, and we don't know if this is pure speculation, but Ivan's childhood, first film, his first film, The Return. Ivan's the character. It's got some similarities and themes. He's a fan. And what's amazing is what you said too. It's not like he's just taking it, like Tarkovsky, and then it's redoing it. The fact that he has a very clear, his own signature, his own voice. It's unique. It's a and for so early for a director to right away have a signature and a voice, a very clear voice, and very clear aesthetics that identify the filmmaker. That's a lot of self-awareness to have so early in your journey.
Yeah, I think Shuyakin wasn't very young when he made this though. Again, it was 21 years ago, but I think he's already like fairly old. So he wasn't like a 20-year-old making the film. So maybe he had like experience of making other type of art. Yeah. And I think Shuyakin is, by the way, working on another film at the moment. So there should be a new one.
Oh, I'm very excited.
Yeah, he doesn't do films that often. He has like again, this was 21 years ago, but I think he has only made 5 feature-length films, so not that many. Yeah.
And the other thing, which is just pure speculation, but I was like, is this in some ways commenting about Russia? Right? I was like, what political commentary might also be going on in this? Because we're looking at it all the relationship layers, but I'm like, is it also has some kind of commentary about history or modern history of Russia itself, and what's going on with this kind of father figure and all that? So I of course that's pure speculation again, and that might not even be the case. But yeah, like you said, it's such a complex piece of work. It's such an amazing experience.
Well, Tony said to me when we talked a few days ago that apparently Shuyakin is like very critical of Putin's regime, for example, which is obviously very brave because you can get killed due to that. But also I think maybe there's some commentary on like the Russian manhood in general, how obviously we think of Russians as they fight bears and they drink vodka and they don't show any emotion and they're very tough. So maybe there's some commentary about like what it means to be a man in Russia.
That's definitely there, right? When he just leaves them out there. He's like, you want to fish? Just leaves them for hours in the rain. Like, right, the kid could get pneumonia, the kid gets sick, he could get whatever. It just doesn't matter, right? It'll toughen you up. You'll like learn your lesson, So this kind of stoic father, in some ways, he's so stoic, right? He's not very reactive. But he's like trying to do all these things to toughen them up and fix your tent and all this stuff. Like, this is how you get a car out of the mud, and all these kinds of things you're supposed to know about the world if you're going to be a man in this world.
It's so relatable for my childhood as well.
Yeah. I figured as much. I saw that and I was like, I wonder like how much this must also connect with you on that level, even in like, you didn't grow up around like a main big city, so it's like, your surroundings, and even maybe some of the trips maybe you took, maybe you did go camping, maybe you did go fishing or whatever. And I know how much you love fish because I know sardines are your favorite food.
Yeah,
I know you hate fish, by the way. I remember that. You say you don't like fish, so.
Yeah, I'm like half fish phobia. I call it that because I'm like really scared of fish for some reason. Although I've always liked swimming in the lakes and rivers, even though they're full of fish. But yeah. Anyway, random side note. But yeah, there's so many things I can relate to in this film. Again, when you're like male, like father figures and stuff can say to you that you are supposed to know this already, and why did you do this again, and that all that kind of anger and toxicity, because they never learn to show like emotions in a healthy way, but they only learn to show it through anger and frustration and resentment, and not through love and understanding.
My question was, how did he find what he was looking for without a good GPS?
And his feet got wet as well. Not
Yeah, his feet did
winter.
get wet. You're right. His feet got wet, and I think it was winter.
But anyway, to any of the viewers, this is just an inside joke about my stepfather. So
Oh, yeah.
well, I'll tell the viewers that again. My stepfather was quite the creature. He he loved GPSs. So, for example, when we were in Berlin for 5 nights, he wanted to spend some of that time to go to the electronic shop to look out for GPSs that he didn't even need, because he was just obsessed about GPS. And when we went to taxi, he asked the taxi drivers that which brand is that GPS and which brand are these car tires as well, and things like that. It's absolutely embarrassing. And then he also said one more thing, then we move on from this side note, but he also said that if your feet get wet in the winter, then your legs have to be amputated, which is just absolutely moronic. When my feet got wet just a couple of weeks ago and it's winter and my legs are here still intact. I mean, in Finland, you cannot avoid your feet getting wet in the
legs.
winter.
We want you to have your legs, yeah.
But yeah, with that person, I had lots of these types of experiences that we have in the film. Like I said again, he kidnapped me and his son, and we drove for a few hundred kilometers, and he was drunk driving, and so we could have gotten killed and stuff, but we didn't, fortunately.
But you're so right. You're so right. Even in this film, all these things you're supposed to know as a man. Because I was just thinking about this the other day, and I'm no doubt because I saw this film. I was thinking, oh, I don't own a car. So I was like, and growing up, especially in Canada and stuff, especially when we're living in the suburbs and all that, having a car is so important. So there's all this knowledge that your father and the men in your family impart on you about cars. When they have to get out of the mud, this is what you do to get out of the mud. Oh, this is how you with winter tires and this and that. And then I was sitting there thinking, oh, all that knowledge is of no use to me because I don't have a car. I don't own a car. I don't drive a car. And I'm so much effort was oh, you need to know how all this stuff about cars and that's how they were taught. And like you said, it's this generational. But yeah, this movie definitely digs all that up. It's such a fantastic, one of the best films I've ever seen about the father-son dynamic, and representing that with so much heart and reality, and really getting the emotional aspects right. Fantastic.
Okay, so the return, and by the way, this cover is very good example of the color of the film as well as it is.
Yeah.
Very blue. And again, this won even some prizes.
When you were doing that, it almost looked lenticular. It looked like the boy was moving.
Yeah.
This would be a cool one to actually have a lenticular case. I'm not a super lenticular case guy, but because of the feeling, I feel like it fits well with the feeling of the film. It's so hologramish, it's the return.
But yeah, do you have anything more to say about the film, or?
Oh, I could go on and on, but I think we did it justice.
Yeah, I think
we did it justice. Yeah, we did it justice.
Yeah, such a great movie, one of my absolute favorites from the 21st century, and
yeah, this is one of the best of the 21st century. There's no doubt.
And even of all time, so
yeah. It's good to see art in the 21st century that can sit with the greats.
Yeah. But yeah, so next we are gonna talk about another masterpiece, 51 years before the return. So it's this one, Kenji Mizoguchi's The Life of Oharu, one of his 3 most famous films. Again, his most famous is probably Shansho Dayu or Yugetsu, and then after those, it's this one. But this is a very brutal and dark film. But anyway, I'll let you tell us some general quick thoughts about it before we get into the details.
So as it stands right now, I feel like I would say Kobayashi is my heart and Mizoguchi is my soul. Like it's like what can I say? It's only my second film of Mizoguchi's, but I mean soul wrenching. But it's your soul. Like it's your soul on film. That's what I can say about it. I mean, it's just a profound experience watching this film. It's like we discussed, the plot is not complex, but what happens is very complex.
Yeah, so I think we are gonna probably focus more on the themes, but also I want to talk about the aesthetic as well. But the plot is fairly simple. It's kind of this never-ending tragedy that there is always something happens to Oharu. It's always something bad, and it's just new bad things keep happening to her all the time, and she never finds happiness. Really, it's just all brutal. But again, with the aesthetic, it starts with these like really great shots. It looks quite brutal in a way. How he shoots the buildings and stuff, and with the trees and everything, it's just so dark and so brutal, and it just sets off the mood so well. I mean, the whole film doesn't look as dark as some of the darkest shots, but there are some shots that are just absolute brutality in a way.
Yeah. What? Yeah, it's like I don't have words. I was trying to figure out how do you describe his style and his aesthetics, but it's just it's just beautiful. It's just like it's like something that's you're watching, like you said, like suffering, like brutality or difficult things, and then there's just this beauty, like this poetic lens. It's very poetic the way he shoots, and how he even blocks the scenes and the interactions and all that. I mean that's what, and what, like, yeah, it's lovely black and white cinematography. I wonder, none of his films, I think, they've been able to do any 4K scans yet, right? I mean, this is one I would hope, and all his films, his black and white films, I would love if they were able to do more improved scans, because it's such fantastic black and white cinematography and the lighting and all that.
Yeah, the framing is just so good, and he often doesn't use like close-ups, but we see these characters from a bit more further away, and we have these like very methodical shots that look like paintings, and okay, we often just put the camera somewhere and there's this nice frame, and then we see what happens. But yeah, the cinematography really kind of sets the tone of the film and also the themes of the film. We said the film is kind of like has like Schopenhauerian levels of suffering. It's just all just full on suffering and barely any pleasure there. And of course, this is situated in the 17th century Japan with feudalism and everything. So it's really dark. Obviously, we follow the story where it's really awful for women. And it was really awful for women, but it wasn't that great for men either. Yeah, like we see in the beginning, like Oharu is in love with this low-ranked man, but then the guy gets executed, and it's really awful how we see that. They even talk about it, how why can't we just love each other, and why do you care about it? Like, no, but we are gonna brutalize your life just because you loved someone. It's just so dark.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, well, this film is, first, I feel like the premise is steeped in Buddhist teachings and tradition. All life is suffering, right? And then part of Buddha's enlightenment was part of recognizing what the different forms of suffering are, and so in that way, it's like Mizoguchi's doing the same. He's basically saying all life is suffering, and then look at the unfairness and suffering, and not only that, what do you think about a person who is visited with this level of unfairness and suffering? Because it's kind of a thing we don't think about, right? We don't think about that someone could have such an unfair life. And of course, he's taking us to a certain period where we can know for sure there are people who could experience that kind of a whole unfair life, a whole life of suffering. But it's also allegorical in the sense that it's also all life is suffering, and then the question really is that how do you escape suffering? And then of course the traditional thing is that you remove yourself from the cycle of birth, death, and like rebirth to escape that. And in some ways that kind of relates to this played by Toshiro Mifune, like her first love, and then she sees him in the face of the bodhisattva. So he's kind of representing that in some ways, that he's kind of escaped the suffering of this life, and she's still in it. But in that way, there's also seems to be some kind of, I would say, not critique, but I'll just use the word critique, but I don't think it's entirely correct, when she's kind of talking about that scene at the end where she's with the other women, and then they're like, look at all these bodhisattvas' faces. They all have the faces of men we've known. So this duality is there as well. Like with the men, they can be bodhisattvas and all that, but what about the women? What do they have? How do they transcend this life of suffering and all that? And Oharu was trying to just figure it out as she goes, because she's trapped in this unfair system.
Yeah, she even laughs at one point a little when, I think it's her mother who says that maybe now you can find happiness, but she obviously knows that it's not gonna happen. Always something bad happens. But of course, this shows that when you have a corrupt system, a corrupt world, it doesn't matter really what the individual is or what the individual thinks, what the individual does, because the system is gonna corrupt your life anyway, no matter what you do. It corrupts these people who are in power, because then they corrupt them with toxicity, and then these toxic people corrupt the people who don't have the power, and it's just this cycle of different types of corruption and suffering that's never ending. And of course, even though things have gotten better since that, but many of these critiques in this film are still relevant today, with toxic systems that we have today, and women still have it very rough, even here in the West in some ways, and especially in many different countries in the world. And yeah, so it's again, like we often talk about with many of these classic films, it's very particular to a certain time, but it's also very universal. So that's why many of these classic films still hold up so well today, that they can have a particular thing, but also they transcend time, and they transcend the passage of time.
Yeah, you're right. And this movie is brutal, right? Because it's like, in some ways, she's like all aspects of women, and then how society, and especially men and men's in different roles, how they use up the women. So in some ways too, even though it is, she does fall in love with the character played by Toshiro Mifune. In some ways, that's when men wanting a woman for love. Then there's the father who wants her as the woman as a daughter, and as a daughter for certain reasons, like either to improve his prestige or connect him to greater opportunity and status, or as a meal ticket. Then there are those men that just want women for physical pleasure, and then once they're done with that, they just discard them. And then there's also the hypocrisy, in a sense, of the holy men who are using women as a way to portray them as some sort of devil, right? Like of temptation, and why you shouldn't essentially engage women or even desire women, because they are kind of the source of corruption and ruin to your life. So it's this really brutal depiction of the different ways women are kind of used up and then discarded when they're no longer useful. And then, as obviously after a certain point, they seem to have no value, right? Because that's where the film sort of starts. She's older now, and she's forced to be working as a prostitute, and of course no one wants her because now you're old. Like, what use are you to the world now that you're old? And so showing how brutal that world is, or the world can continue to be sometimes, for women, because there's this time bar, and you're only there for certain functions and certain purposes, and beyond that you don't have a kind of journey of your own. You don't have aspirations and desires of your own, and you're not supposed to. So it's a terrible world that we're being made aware of.
Yeah, the kind of Schopenhauerian element sounds so pretentious, but comes in when Schopenhauer, in his essay about suffering, talks about how life is mostly suffering, but there are these very kind of small things of pleasure and happiness sometime, and lots of other pessimist thinkers and thinkers of that kind has said that as well, that there's this asymmetry between pleasure and pain, that there's more pain and suffering than pleasure. But anyway, so we can see that there are some like very brief moments when it feels like maybe now her life will get better, like when she gives birth to her son, but obviously then she gets disregarded after that, and then they don't really even let her talk to her son near the end and everything. So even though there was that brief moment of happiness, but it all gets corrupted in the end. And of course, in this world, we see how nobody really cares about love or virtues. Many of the people even laugh at Oharu, even though she suffered so much, and they again torment her, and then they even laugh about it. They are that level of sadistic. And we see how even her parents just care about rank and class. They don't care about her finding love or happiness, but it's just all about the rank and class and money and these kinds of like petty and surface level things, and not about like spiritual growth or love or virtue or any of these things that actually matter in life.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned the son, because one of the purposes of the woman, the reproduction or giving birth, I didn't include but that. And then it's also like Oharu, she can only be happy, like she has to have a man somehow to be able to have some kind of happiness. So it's like love, but then it's like, inappropriate love, and then you need a man there. And then it's like, or her son, like all her ways out of her misery relate to being able to attach herself to a man, which is like absolutely heartbreaking, and shows you like the utter unfairness of the system and the suffering. And again, Misoguchi cleverly shows us that then there's suffering, but if you want to look at the ultimate experience of suffering, you have to look at the life of a woman, not a man. Even studying a life of a man is not going to show you the level of unfairness and suffering that actually exists. You have to actually go and look at the life of a woman. And it's also interesting that once again, it's like you pick these two films that have similarities, because even Life of Oharu, it's bookended. It's a bookended film. Where it starts is right near where it ends. So in the beginning, she's laughing. She's sharing, I went to this experience, and this guy picked me up, and I thought I was going to make some money, and then it ended up with this priest, and he was just trying to teach his students about karmic retribution. And then at the end of the film, when we actually get to see the events she's describing and laughing about, and we realize she's been utterly humiliated in that scene. And then you piece it together that after that scene, it's the beginning scene where she's laughing about it. And so we don't know her pain because she's laughing about it, and it's the way we kind of just see her. She's living this frivolous life. Maybe she's a prostitute and she's old now and all this stuff, and having a laugh about all this, but actually she's been utterly humiliated. And you don't see that till the end. And it brings the whole film back together into a loop, which I feel also matches that loop, the cycle of birth, death, rebirth. All life is suffering, and you're trapped in this cycle, trapped in this cycle. That's the kind of Buddhist imagery there. And it kind of fits in with how the story is structured as well.
And you can really see the density and the layers of this film when you really think about all the different kind of things that Mizoguchi criticizes here. So we have the feminist angle that the life is suffering for women, but then we also have this kind of Marxist class critique here, where we see that class matters as well. And that's where we see how, again, these men also get like really screwed over in this film. It's when they are low ranked and when they don't have the class. Yeah. But of course, for women, it's both their sex and their class, but for men, it's only the class. But then, in addition to that class and feminist critique, and again, Mizoguchi was known as a kind of like a feminist and Marxist filmmaker and a humanist filmmaker, but then we also, like we talked about, we have this idea of suffering and these big themes about what life is all about, and these kind of almost like existential things, and like these very big themes about humanity's nature, like human nature and the nature of life and the systems that we have. So there's so many things about this film. It's such a layered film.
Yeah, it's a very layered film, and it actually has parallels with the Sancho as well, because I was like, okay, he's interested in this aspect where people start in a higher class and then they actually show some kind of morality or goodness or even wisdom or the challenge to the system, because that's how Sancho is too. And then they're basically thrown off. They are basically excommunicated from their class and forced to now live as a lower in amongst the lower classes in one way or another. So that also happens in Sancho Dayu, and then like what they see, and then the unfairness that's visited on them, and then it's like a trap. There's no way out. So I didn't know this about him being kind of like you said, like feminist, Marxist, and all that. I didn't know as much about his politics, but you can also see this kind of all those elements of that condemning quality that once, and whether you're Marxist or not, this is a truth. Like if you're dropped off and you're into that situation, you can't just climb out of it. It's not so easy to climb out of it. There's a million traps that you just can't climb out of, and then you're kind of stuck there, and then you're forever changed as a result as well, because of what you've seen and what you've experienced. So
yeah, and again, I don't know that much about his own politics, but when you watch like many of his films, there is always this kind of recurring theme of like we see women suffering and having to like, again, their life results in prostitution, for example, and they don't have any other way out of their, like, whether it's financial troubles or troubles with suffering or whatever. Yeah, and of course, like you mentioned, again, Sancho Dayu, that film is all about suffering as well. And of course, in that film, we can see also how the women suffer often more than the men, but the men suffer too, like the son who, again, gets the rank, but that doesn't help it doesn't help him because the system is so corrupt. And obviously, in Sancho Dayu finds his mother near the end, and she's blind, and it's just incredibly dark. And in his films, we don't see that great quote from Sancho that even if you are hard on yourself, be merciful to others. That doesn't happen in this world. Like none of these people are merciful. And with Oharu, it's actually interesting because she starts like before they find out that she is in love with that low-ranked man, that she actually has a decent life, and she is like, I guess, like in decent kind of class position, but then it's the downward spiral starts when she's in love with that man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking story. A heartbreaking story. And her fall is, yeah, as soon as she starts questioning this class thing and why do I have to love, how can love or whatever companionship be limited to class, and then that's it. Now she is forever condemned for having that belief, much like in Sanshirdayu, like the father stands up and then it's like, you're cast away now. And then, yeah, it's after that, it's just heartbreaking. But like I said, it's like, it connects with your soul because in your experience, you know that life is suffering. There's just so much suffering in life. So it never feels, it's tragic, but I don't know. I also feel like it never feels like too much. It doesn't feel exaggerated. It also doesn't feel melodramatic. That's what I noticed. Even though I'm not someone who's against melodrama, so I don't know why some people almost use melodrama like as a bad word. I think there are great films that are melodramas. And so some would call his films melodramatic, but I just feel like the tone is just so perfect, like so perfectly dialed that you're seeing the suffering, but it doesn't seem like he's trying to manipulate you by showing you extreme suffering. It feels real. It feels relatable.
Yeah, it definitely does. And there aren't these like over the top scenes of like Oharu crying a lot or anything like that. It's fairly kind of not that melodramatic and fairly kind of cold in a way, but we really relate to her. But I was also going to make a point that it really feels like her life has been kind of predetermined. And no matter what she does, her life is going to end in suffering and it's going to end very badly. But that's not just the case for her. When you have this type of world, like the expectation is that your life is going to be suffering, but especially for women, there was no other road in life. It's always going to be suffering. You're always going to be treated badly and you won't have a way out unless there's like some kind of big miracle in your life. But there's no freedom in this world, and not even kind of free will in a way, how it feels so deterministic what's going to happen to these people. And that's kind of what the brutality is there too, that again, no matter what you do, it's going to be full, your life is going to be full of suffering. So why do anything at all in the end when you're not going to escape that suffering? And that creates that kind of cycle also when you start with this mindset that there's never gonna be happiness or anything. So why would you even try to create happiness when you know it's not gonna happen?
Yeah, you're hitting on some like really interesting things because you talked about this whole predetermined thing, and it's so interesting because the film starts with a dialogue about karmic retribution, right? And karmic retribution is a form of determinism. So it's like you've accumulated this karma, so your life is basically determined based on your previous karma. So like you said, so it's like she's destined to this because she's accumulated bad karma. And then if you see that as a larger cycle, so maybe her previous life was the same as this. So here, what is her way? She has to accumulate good karma to improve her next existence. But how is she supposed to do that in this situation? So then it's almost like an eons long condemnation, and that eons long condemnation is not just to people but a certain class of people, because how do you ever get out? Like we see her dignity drop through throughout the film, and it's like you don't judge her for it. You see her desperation. You're like, who can maintain their dignity in such a situation? And again, that's also in Sancho Dayu, because once they are excommunicated, they're in the lower caste, and no one knows that what class they're coming from. The way the son is behaving and stuff like that, it's not very dignified whatsoever, and it's very selfish and it's very self-interested. But it's like when you're in that trap, what are you supposed to do? And then now you're also under the laws of karmic retribution. So that's just going to loop over and over and over, and there's no way to escape it. So I think the haunting part is that he almost is saying it'll happen, and it's only bound to happen over and over and over. However, there's something hopeful at the end of Sancho Dayu in a way. It's still tragic, but with the water. And then here it's like I think she's considering the monastic life now. She's considering to just be done with this world because it can bring nothing but suffering. And maybe there's hope there. He may be alluding to some hope there. I'm not sure, but it's almost like the question goes back to you as the audience member that, yeah, what are you going to choose almost?
Yeah, but she even kind of struggles to become a nun in the end. Even that doesn't seem to really work out. And obviously this kind of shows the lack of mercy in this world, that if you make one mistake, you are doomed for life. And she didn't even make a real mistake, she just fell in love. But these other people thought that it's a mistake and something bad, even though it isn't. And of course, many of the bad things that happen to her in the film, she gets blamed for them, but even though they were committed by the men in her life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she isn't even responsible for many of the things that she gets blamed for, but always in the end, the society blames her, or I guess blames the woman, because they think that women are less rational or prone to emotions and whatever. So they always blame the woman for all the bad things and not the men. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what do you see as a final scene? Because I was questioning, what is that final scene? Where is she going? She almost seems in a state of peace. She's dressed in like lighter colors, it looks like white perhaps. Has she been cleansed? Is she off to some kind of transcendence, like seek some kind of transcendence? Because I thought it almost seemed like now at that point she's ready to enter the monastic order or something like that. There's an ambiguity to the final scene. There's a peacefulness to that final scene. What has happened? Because before that, it's just she's gone in search of her son, and she's all excited, and she sees that maybe her son is going to be her savior in a sense from all her suffering, and then that doesn't work out, and then there's this final scene. What is that final scene to you? What did it look like to you?
Well, I think in the final scene, she's finally let go of the kind of baggage of her past, and like you said, I think she has transcended and kind of found some peace in kind of the, I guess, spirituality or something, that she has kind of fully realized and come to grips with the fact that life is suffering and nothing's good really gonna happen in her life. So she's gonna just forget about the real world in a way and just focus on the spirituality and stuff, and just try to move forwards with that and transcend the suffering of her past or something like that.
Yeah, I saw it this similarly. Yeah, it's just a really beautiful scene.
I think Tony even mentioned in his small comment on Letterboxd that he wrote about this, that she kind of finds peace in spirituality in the end. Yeah, so I think Tony probably sees the ending as same as we do. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, they're both very emotional films, to be honest. Like, they really they make you emotional. So I kept making me a bit emotional discussing it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it just slowly grinds you down with all the
Yeah. Yeah, my God. Yeah, what a film.
Well, you are gonna see Yuketsu Monogatari soon, so that's not quite as dark as this and Shun. So although none of the Mizoguchi films I have seen are very happy, his films tend to be fairly bleak and dark, but that's a bit different.
I mean, I understand that, or at least after we saw Sancho, I think my wife was like looking up his biography. She's always interested in people's biographies, and then she was telling me that I think he didn't have a well-off background, and then his mother and I think even his sisters like sacrificed so he could have an like education and stuff. And one of the things that I think his mother actually did, or his sisters, was they actually engaged in prostitution. So it seems like it's also he's wrestling with something when he's like in these films that's very personal, that's very biographical as well. So I think that's why it's so comes across so like well in a sense, because it's like it's things he knows, right? It's the same thing we said about Kobayashi. It's like he experienced those, so his human condition was informed by his experiences and his frustrations. So that can be very powerful when an artist can express that well.
Yeah, I'm sure that has affected his films a lot, and I think there's often we kind of divide Mizoguchi's career into a couple of different periods. I think, and I'm not an expert, but I think the early stuff is often thought to be more of the Marxist stuff, and then the later stuff more of the feminist stuff. Hopefully, I'm not getting this wrong. Yeah, so there's bit of difference with the early stuff and this later stuff. Although obviously there's these class discussions in these later films as well. And of course, I think Mizoguchi was also very much influenced by like Japanese theater, and you can see in some of these scenes how like the characters are in the shots and how they act and
you can
everything like that. Yeah,
you could definitely see that. And then he made films to the point where he was also making color films, right? I think, or no?
No, he made like 1 or 2 color films, but most of them are black and white. So. Again, he died in I think 56, so 4 years after this.
Oh, okay. Oh,
okay.
So he didn't make most of that.
Yeah, I think he has like 1 or 2 color films, but he even like in the 50s, he still did black and white films.
Okay.
And again, he died like, I mean, he wasn't like young, but not very old either. So yeah, but his final film, I think, was called Street of Shame, which is also about kind of similar type of themes, but it's very good. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I have that clips up there.
Yeah.
His early ones. I think some of those you've seen. You said you've seen them. So I haven't started watching those yet, but we'll be curious to also watch those.
But I think if you think about like the 3 big Japanese directors, Mizoguchi, Kurosawa, and Ozu, Mizoguchi is clearly the bleakest one, and also all the 3 like have very like signature style. Yeah. Kurosawa is more of that kind of fluffy entertainment, even though there are like many themes in his films too, so they aren't like empty, but they are definitely very simpler than Ozu and Mizoguchi films in many ways. And I think Ozu also, I mean, he explored kind of some of the same themes, like for example, how the life for these young women, for example, in his films is kind of predetermined when the parents want to kind of decide over their lives and yeah, you are gonna marry this, we are gonna arrange a marriage for you, and the women don't have that much agency. But in Ozu films, you can kind of see the shift from the traditional way of looking at women in Japanese society, the new way of where the women are slowly getting more freedom and they are kind of starting to blossom on their own in the way that they can decide what they want to do with their lives. But with Mizoguchi, it's all about the kind of harsh side, and there is not that much hope, even though there are maybe small glimmers of hope, like we talked about.
Yeah, makes all sense, and they do have distinctive styles, and you can definitely see like Kurosawa is like kind of like the head, where it's like, you know, philosophy, but then also ego and all this, and struggles of the mind in sort of ways. Like you can see the different aspects of the mind, where it's like, yeah, like Mizoguchi definitely the soul. And then what would you say about Ozu? I said Kobayashi's heart, but also Ozu's a lot of like heart and social and, you know, family and connection, but then the challenges of that as well. The Ozu's very interesting as well.
I know you saw Late Spring in the cinema recently.
Oh yeah, that's a fantastic movie, and I can see why it's one of your favorites. I mean, absolutely love that film. Like that's Ozu is a whole thing on its own to discuss. Go on and on about Ozu.
I mean, there will be Ozu films on the podcast eventually. So
yeah, that's a whole different aesthetic, isn't it? But it's like it's no less. It's an incredible aesthetic. I absolutely love Ozu. Like, absolutely love his films. I too am a Ozu fanboy, like you're saying, or becoming one, because every one of his I watch, I just fall in love with. I'm like, wow, what a film. Yeah, Kurosawa I enjoy a lot, and I'm still watching, and I like Kurosawa a lot. But I can see that a lot of it sometimes it's about manhood, and then sometimes it's things about ego and all. It has a different path. It's a little more bro, as you would say. So it appeals to that side, of course. But yeah, it's different. It's different compared to these guys.
Yeah, but Kurosawa has a bit more of this stuff in films like Redbeard, for example. So he has that kind of more contemplative.
Yeah, he does.
To him as well. So. But I think when we compare the best films of Mizoguchi and Ozu, the best films of Kurosawa, I think to me these days Mizoguchi and Ozu come on top.
Yeah, and I think it was in this Oharu, Life of Oharu, there's like a mini commentary, right, for like 28 minutes, or did I read somewhere, or someone was talking about how, like, of course, this is like right after Rashomon, and then I think Rashomon's getting all this praise, but they're like, when you look at it, like, this is a way more complex, like, right, like Rashomon is not, and I'm not insulting Rashomon, so please, people, don't come after me. I love Rashomon. I've watched it a couple of times. I saw it once in the cinema recently, so I love Rashomon. But it's not. It's different. It's not as complex as people like to think Rashomon is. It's like kind of more like a fable, like, and it's a great film. But then when you look at what Mizoguchi is doing compared to that in this film, the aesthetic level is at a much higher level. You have to admit that.
Yeah, I do also like Ozu's and Mizoguchi's visual style more than Kurosawa.
Yeah.
But I mean, all of the. But again, we aren't like talking down on Kurosawa because we love his films too. But and we are probably gonna have some of his films on the podcast too. Like I know Throne of Blood. I think you said that you ordered it, or
yeah.
So we might talk about that somewhere in the future, and that's obviously interesting. There's Shakespeare stuff in it and everything.
Yeah, and I love Shakespeare, so it's like adaptations and stuff. I actually just watched a production of Shakespeare this week in the theater, a theater production of Shakespeare. So Macbeth. So I'm excited to see Throne of Blood, and Macbeth is one of the first Shakespeare plays. It's the first Shakespeare play I ever read and learned and stuff. So it's close to my heart. So to see Throne of Blood, and I've actually recently picked up Ran as well, the 4K of Ran. Because that's King Lear, right? And then I do want to also see The Bad Sleep Well, because that's an adaptation of Hamlet. And so I love Kurosawa once again. Please, Kurosawa fans, don't come after me. I'm also a Kurosawa fan. I'm not insulting him at all.
Yeah, there's my complete Shakespeare there. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
That one that has a bit of that blue. Yeah.
And then I have that one. I'm getting mixed up. Up top there is the Shakespeare box set. It's like every Shakespeare play was the production of each Shakespeare play on the BBC, because they did this decades-long project where they did each and every play he's ever written, and so that's like a DVD box set of all those. So I've been trying to, I've started going through those as well. So
That's kind of fun coincidence that it's next to like some manga, so Japan and Shakespeare next to each other. So kind of like we are talking about here. But anyway, let's go back to that.
But Shakespeare was no less than like what you say about Obayashi. He was also high art, low art. I mean, he was also he wrote stuff for everybody, right? He put gags in there. He put fart jokes. He put all kinds of things.
Yeah, but it's like we've talked about, some things were accessible back in the day, but now some people see them as like very snobby or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Even though it's not, but anyway, so the Life of Oharu. Is there anything else we want to say about this one?
No, I mean, we could obviously, again, another one we could go on and on, but I think we did justice to the discussion. It's a terrific film. Once again, another wonderful set of recommendations, and that are going to keep on continuing. So I'm just like really enjoying this. Like, this is like just a lot of fun. So I look forward to hearing what's next.
Yeah. One thing I said about this, obviously in the beginning, I said that maybe we won't talk about the plot that much, but I mean, we covered quite a bit of the plot as well when we were talking about the themes. Yeah, but of course, with these types of films, it's the themes that are usually the more interesting thing to talk about. But anyway,
I mean, the plot, knowing the plot, this is one of those films that I would say, if you knew the whole plot, it won't matter. It's the experience. So you may know the plot, but when you experience the film, it doesn't matter if you know the plot. Yeah.
And it's just worth seeing even for the aesthetics alone. It would be worth seeing, because Mizoguchi's framing and everything, it's just one of the best of that era and of all times.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I'm glad that you liked both of the films again, and I thought that you would like those. So yeah, but hopefully you will like the next ones as well that we are gonna talk about now. Obviously, you viewers know this one already, as I spoiled it in the last episode, but it's the Jacques Rivet's The Nun, La Religieuse, based on a Denis Diderot novel from the 18th century, and starring the great Anna Karenina. Might be her best performance here. So yeah,
I'm very excited. I've never seen Jacques Rivet film, so this will be my first.
Yeah, this is like a bit different than many of his other films. So yeah, and I'm sure we are going to talk about several Rivet films in this podcast, as he's one of my top 10 directors, and that's one of my top 10 films. So yeah, hopefully you will like it too. I mean, you probably will, but you never know.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. And then to also hear, because I know you've gone through a lot of work trying to think about what to put this film together with, as you mentioned in videos too.
Yeah. And I'll do also the short video after this podcast, where I'm gonna do like short introductions to the films, where I give like some like preliminary comments that you can also think about when you watch them and stuff like that. So I think that will be a good tradition for our podcast for hopefully the years to come, when we go through my whole favorites list and stuff.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
But actually, I was gonna keep this second big secret from Altaz, but he kind of mentioned this film before we started recording, so he kind of, I guess, unconsciously kind of knew what I was gonna pick or something.
I was on the wavelength.
Yeah, but it's this Italian film by the great director Luchino Visconti, Lenotti Bianchi, starring the great Marcello Mastroianni.
I'm so excited to see that one.
And it's actually,
because I remember when I picked up, I forget which Visconti film I picked up, and you were like, Lenotti Bianchi is my favorite.
Yeah.
So I
think it was it Senso? I think.
Yes, exactly. Yes, when I picked up Senso, yeah.
But yeah, it's my favorite Visconti, which is probably not like a very popular opinion, but it's just kind of it just has the type of plot and themes that I like. So it's about love and kind of tragic love and things like that. But I don't want to spoil it too much. But one thing to mention about the Le Notti Bianche is that it's based on Dostoevsky's short story White Nights, and I actually have that short story here in this Oxford First Classics. This edition is called A Gentle Creature and Other Stories, and one of the other stories is White Nights. So I'm actually planning to read that before we talk about it, but it's only like 55 pages or something like that. So it's a very short.
I might try to do that as well. Yeah, because 55 pages is not long. So maybe I'll try to read it as well, because that would be very interesting.
And this is like a very nice edition, as this has a couple of other stories.
That's beautiful cover.
Yeah.
What a stunning cover.
Yeah, it's a painting called Tired by Christian Kroch. It's But this was one of my birthday presents to myself, so yeah, got this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it's coming up.
Yeah, it's
coming up on Monday, I think.
March 11th, so viewers, wish me a happy birthday.
Yeah.
But yeah,
early birthday.
Yeah, but White Nights is actually one of Tony's favorite written works, so it should be a great short story, and I've loved everything by Dostoevsky that I've read. So this will be my 4th Dostoevsky thing that I've read.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've read 0 Dostoevsky.
Yeah. Maybe this short story would be a good way to go for you as well. I'm sure that you could get this like in London, like in Waterstones or something.
Yeah, I will. I'll look for this one, because I think it would be fun. It's nice to see that, and then how it's been adapted and all that. So,
I mean, for example, the Piccadilly Circus Waterstones has basically every classic that you would want. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I think, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, bookstore in Europe. So.
Oh, okay. I've never been to that one.
Yeah,
and I like Waterstones. So wow. So okay, maybe I'll go today. Because you mentioned it. That would be a fun little Saturday trip to go to that. It would be very inspiring to talk to you and then go to the bookstore. I can just feel like I'm operating
I even bought Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment from the stores.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Very nice.
And it's the road from Piccadilly Circus that goes towards Green Park. Can't remember what the street is called anymore. But.
Okay, yeah, because there's a tube line from here. It's just a few stops actually to Green Park. So maybe I'll get off at Green Park and just walk over from there, like you said.
Yeah. And it's and the Piccadilly Circus station is like 2-minute walk from that, basically. So.
Okay. Yeah.
You can also check Google Maps or something before, so you can see.
No, I'll definitely do that. I'm already planning also a trip, hopefully soon, to the Tate, because I want to see that painting, your favorite painting. You said so it made me feel like going to the Tate again.
And the Tesco on Piccadilly Circus was one of my main supermarkets. So.
Oh yeah,
mid-sized Tesco there. I always went there with the PFI South Bank trips and all the Central London trips, and obviously FOB, Covent Garden FOB is very close to that Piccadilly Circus station as well. Yeah.
So you do your grocery shopping and then would take the bus back, or?
Often I did that, because that Tesco is open, I think, until midnight. So even if I saw like an evening movie, I usually had time to go there, unless it was Sunday. Yeah.
And BFI South Bank last Friday, or was it Friday? Yeah, last Friday I think it was. I went to see a movie there. And when you come out in the evening and you see all the lights, I mean, it's such a terrific location, that where BFI South Bank is. So and then there's that statue of Laurence Olivier right by the National Theatre, which is also amazing.
And then, of course, the Piccadilly Circus area is really fun to walk at too. Like when you walk down towards St. James Park, and there's lots of beautiful architecture, and especially in the evening with the lights, it looks really great. And it has all the theaters and stuff. And I just walk there all the time. Yeah, loved it. And Saint James Park was somewhere where I went to read sometimes as well. Because London has so many great parks. Yeah, one of my favorite things about London is that so many great parks. Green Park, Hyde Park, St. James Park, and many of the smaller ones too.
Yeah, Regent's Park. Yeah. Hopefully soon we'll get a visit from you. That'll be great.
Yeah.
That'll be great. So many things to do. Yeah. Looking forward to these films.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There are even some small things that I really miss about, like something as stupid as Tesco, like the ham, the like smoked ham and cheddar, like the sandwiches, I always bought those, And then Reese's peanut butter cups, because they are really expensive in Finland because they import them from the UK and the US, so they are like triple the price that they are there. So it doesn't make any sense to buy them here with a student budget. But in London, the last year in London, like Reese's peanut butter cups were just so okay.
I would send some to you, but then I'm afraid of corrupting you, as you are on you have your resolutions for the year.
Which go like this sometimes, like so many relapses, and then sometimes it goes better. But
that's life, right?
Yeah. But at least I've been.
If it's going like this, but if it's on its way up, then the trend is, as long as the trend is.
At least I've been way happier than when I did that video. So
that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
But anyway, let's go to the. Oh, one thing I wanted to also say about these films, by the way, and films and podcast in general. I talked about this with you in the pre-talk already, but to let the viewers know that I think I'm gonna do like some big video or multiple videos of that I will talk about, where I will talk about some films that we will do in the podcast in the future, and I will also show in that video like where these things can be watched and what kind of Blu-ray editions are available about them. So that's kind of good way to also show Altaz of some things that he might want to buy for the podcast in the future, and also to give the viewers some idea of the films that we will be talking about in the future, as we are really planning to have this podcast for very long term. So yeah, so that will be interesting video to do. I will do it sometime soon. I obviously have to create the list and stuff, but it will probably be a fairly long list, but maybe I'll do like a couple of different videos, as there will be so many films. And we are also going to plan to do some quote-unquote guilty pleasure episode at some point too, where we talk about some like action trash or something like that. And there are so many of those films too, so yeah, we'll see how those episodes will go in the future. But, yeah.
That'll be fun as well.
But Altaz is actually gonna get a Criterion flash sale haul soon, so you will see that when it arrives. So yeah.
Yes, yeah. I won't reveal what. There's a theme to that haul. So, but since I'm in the UK, it's going to take like another 3 weeks before that arrives. But yeah, look out for that. It has a connection to this, what we're doing here.
And Altaz also got me a Blu-ray birthday present, but I will show it in the podcast actually when I get it. So I will show what it is. So
yeah, I hope you get it soon, because it's already on its way. So I hope it arrives at least close to your birthday, because you should have something on your birthday. I think that would be it's nice to send you a birthday gift.
Yeah, I'm also getting a gift from Tony, so we'll see when that comes.
Fantastic!
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Oh, that'll be really nice. I can't wait to see what that is.
Well, it's a book, but I don't even know myself what it is yet, because I gave him I gave him a list of books that I want, and so he got to choose which one he wanted to buy me. So we'll see.
Yeah, books are the best gift.
Yeah.
Did you write anything inside? We don't know.
We'll see. Yeah, we don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Because I like doing this thing. It's like if someone gives you a book, they just write something inside the book. And it's like, it's such a nice gift. Yeah, you have that book. Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm really excited about the future of this podcast with the countless of films that we are going to talk about. Like there are so many films that we can talk about. Of course, now first we are probably going to again focus on these things that are on physical media and stuff, but later on there will be some stuff that cannot be bought as they are just aren't available that way. So you might have to watch them on through YouTube or something, but we will see when we get to that point. But now we can, in these first episodes, talk about the Blu-ray stuff. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, there is one more segment to this podcast, and it's the music segment. So I recommended Altaz this collection of like Franz Schubert piano pieces that a pianist called András Schiff played, and he's known as one of the best performers of Schubert's piano pieces. And again, this was the first time for me to listen to this as well, and I really liked listening to them. Again, there are some pieces were better than others, in my opinion. I like the last couple the most, the Vier Impromptus, I think it was called, and then the last one was the Piano Sonata 960 or something, I think. So those two were my favorites. Yeah, but what did you think about this one?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I like, because before when I was listening to classical music, right, you would hear a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and so it's nice how you're suggesting like more concentrated. So this was all Schubert, so it was like you got to get a feel for the music and the style. So I do love piano, and what I liked about his stuff is that some of it was almost lullaby-like, and then some of it was quite dreamy as well, and some of the pieces were like more relaxing, but then other ones maybe conveyed some kind of anxiety or activity as well. And it got me actually wanting to learn a little about Schubert. So I was like watching some like YouTube, some guy's done some like a YouTube video where he's playing the pieces and going through his history. So I'm like, I'm becoming one of the Schubertiads myself, as you and Tony already are. So it was really interesting to learn about him. I didn't know that he was also a student of
Salieri.
Salieri, who was the antagonist of Mozart, or at least in Amadeus. But really interesting stuff. Like really great. I think I need to listen. I will definitely be listening to it more. I really enjoyed it.
And also some background info. So Schubert was born in 1797, and so it's the kind of, I think, late classical, early romantic period where he composed, and he of course died fairly young at 31, but he was one of those kind of child kind of brainiacs or whatever, that he was like really talented when he was very young, and I think his family encouraged him to do music, but I think he also was he a teacher or something, so he wasn't like a full-time composer, even though he left us with so many different music, again, string quartets, quintets, symphonies, and these piano pieces, for example. And even though he died so young, he's of course still considered to be one of the greatest composers ever, and I know many people consider him to be like one of the more kind of emotional composers. I think András Schiff, who played these pieces, also said that his pieces are so emotional, and you can see it in these piano pieces. Again, some of them are like very chill, and there's like lots of space between the notes.
Yeah.
But then in the end, like the couple of my favorite pieces that I mentioned, the last sonata and then the Vier Impromptus or whatever it's called, and so those were a bit more intense, and there was a bit more kind of more notes and more virtuosity. They're a bit more dynamic, when much of the stuff earlier in the recording were kind of more chill, but I like the really virtuoso stuff a lot. but I also like the chill stuff. It's really good, and I think this type of music works both as a kind of background listening, but also active listening, because it has that calming effect on you. So I could even see myself listening to this when I'm studying or something, but it's just very beautiful. And I also agreed with the comment that many of these people say that it's very emotional, although I think the string pieces that I've heard from him, the famous string quintet, and then some of the quartets like Death and the Maiden and Rosamunde, I think those made me even more emotional, but it's just the string instruments are a bit more emotional to me than piano in general, but I think these piano pieces were very emotional and beautiful as well.
Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing as you've been recommending this music and I've been like listening to it, it's changing the way I'm listening to music in general. Like I feel like it's shifting something, so it's like really listening to this music and in a concentrated way, and like really journeying with it is changing my perceptions of music in general. It's almost like the similar feeling thing that happened with film, like watching these different films started to change the way you're watching film in general, like your level of attention, but even kind of your tastes, and then what you're searching for in music and your appreciation of it has increased a lot. So I'm really appreciating it. I know I don't most of the time don't really have the words because I don't know how to really still know how to kind of talk about it. But I can see everything you're describing, like the spaciness with the notes and stuff like that. A lot of it can be, even though you're saying it's pre-romantic, but it had kind of a romantic kind of almost element to it, a song type element to it. But yeah, I can also see the virtuosity parts are really impressive, enjoyable. So he's definitely up there now for me, way up there. And this recording too is up there. It's like one that I'm gonna keep revisiting because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, he's quickly becoming one of my favorite composers. Although again, I'm still too much of a casual and novice to say who is like my favorite and who is my least favorite and things like this. But now I've listened to these piano pieces and again some of the string pieces and a couple of the symphonies as well. So I'm slowly becoming a more of a Schubert aficionado, I guess, and hopefully an expert at some point. But we'll see about that. Yeah, and he's again, by the way, from Austria. Obviously, many great composers are from Austria, of course. Like there, of course, the many big countries, like Russia is one big country, then obviously Germany and Austria, and yeah. But and I think his work, like what I read about it, was like it wasn't that appreciated when he was living, but then pretty soon after his death in the later 18th or 19th century, other composers like Felix Mendelssohn and people like that really kind of appreciated Schubert's music, and then it ended up becoming, he ended up becoming one of the most acclaimed composers, like I said earlier, and now obviously his music is played on absolutely everywhere, and yeah, everybody loves him who listen to classical music. And with András Schiff also, I want to mention that this isn't the only recording of Schubert's pieces that he has done, that he has also many other recordings. Some of them are shorter, some are quite long like this, so it might be worth it to look at his other recordings at some point too. So.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what you're going to suggest for the next one?
Or yeah, I know exactly. Yet? I know exactly what I'm doing. So I'll do that now. So I'm glad that we both enjoyed Schubert, and again, we probably will return to him in the future of the podcast.
Oh, but yeah.
But by the way, this is a side note, but I think we could also, we focus on classical music, but also do like jazz at some point.
Yes.
That would be fun too. I know you like jazz. So.
Yeah, and I'm open to everything, so I'm always open to learn about all kinds of music and stuff and art. So I'm not one of those that I'm like, oh, I won't listen to this, I won't listen to that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm just kind of putting that out there that we can kind of try some other forms of music at some point too. But the next one is gonna be classical also. So it's by Gustav Holst, who is an interesting composer, and it's his piece called The Planets. So this like
fantastic. I love The Planets. So I love to listen to it again. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 50 minutes, around 50 minutes long, and there's a particular recording also for this. But again, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's this famous conductor called Herbert von Karajan.
Okay, yep.
And it's the Berlin Philharmonica or Berliner Philharmoniker.
I was just seeing if I could pull it out. But anyways, we're recording right now. But I have it like sitting like right here, but not that one. So it'll be interesting to listen to another recording of it.
Okay, but again, I'll show you. But I'll show you the recording also in the video that I'm gonna shoot probably tomorrow or tonight. So yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
But that's great. Yeah. But Herbert von Karajan, who the recording is by, he has like some of the most famous recordings of like Beethoven symphonies as well, and lots of interesting stuff. So he's like a conductor who is worth looking into more in general. Yeah, I listened to his like some of the Beethoven stuff recently and some other stuff as well.
Yeah.
But The Planets was something that really blew me away when I listened to it recently. Although I don't want to spoil the comments yet, so we'll talk about it next time.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, and I'm very excited to listen to it again because I haven't listened to it in a long time. So very excited to listen to it.
Yeah. Something very different from these Schubert pieces.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, again, we don't want to spoil the comments.
Yeah.
For the next time. Yeah.
But anyway, this was another fun podcast to do. Third episode. I think all of these episodes have gone well. Every single time I'm a bit nervous that do I have anything to say about this?
Yeah, same.
But every time the analysis just comes somewhere from off the top of your head. And I think we have like pretty good chemistry for this type of stuff. That always when you say something, then I start to think about something else, and then the same happens with you. That when I say something, there's some like light bulb inside your head that goes on. And
yeah, 100%. It's the dialogue, and every time, even last night, I was stressing about the same thing. I was like, what am I going to say tomorrow? I haven't paid enough attention in watching these films. Like, that's how I always feel. And then we have the dialogue, and then I'm like, oh no. This is actually, it becomes like 3D. It's great.
And again, I think both the Nun and Le Notti Bianche will be great discussions as well.
Yeah.
There's so many things to say about those. And they even have some similarities to each other, but I don't want to spoil what they are because they would kind of spoil some of the tone of the movies and things like that if I said what the similarities are. But, yeah.
Very excited.
Yeah. And Le Notti Bianche will be our first Italian film of the podcast, but obviously there will be more in the future as there are many great Italian directors. So there will be Fellini, perhaps Antonioni at some point. And then, there's this other kind of Marcello Mastroianni film also, but I'm not going to say the name yet, but it will probably be this year, so sometime this year as well.
Yeah. All right. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching this podcast. And if you have any comments about any of these films or this music or anything else, you can comment down below. And hopefully you join us for the next episode as well. And if you want to watch the films before that, obviously you can do that if you can find them. Le Notti Bianche at least on the Criterion channel on good quality, so people can watch it there if they want. I'm not sure all the places where the Nun is available, but you can get the Blu-ray in the UK by Studio Canal, and I think there was some US Blu-ray for it too, and you can probably find it online for streaming some way as well. So
Absolutely, yeah. Look forward to everyone's comments.
Yeah. But yeah, now it's time for the awkward outro as always. So yeah. Yeah. Always the beginnings and the endings make me laugh. So the viewers can see it now too, but that's fun. Yeah. But yeah. Sayonara and arigato gozaimashita.